Hello and welcome to Story Radio, the podcast for readers, writers and lovers of literature everywhere. Today we're meeting Libby Page. She is the author of the bestseller, The Keeper of the Stories, and she's here today to talk about her new novel, The Book of Beginnings, which has friendship as a central theme. Sally, could you tell our listeners a little about the plot of your novel?
Certainly. Rather like The Keeper of Stories was about stories and about everybody having a story to tell, The Book of Beginnings really draws on friendship. I've been very fortunate in my life to have some extremely good friendships, but this deals with friendships you make unexpectedly, perhaps later in life, sometimes friendships that go wrong. But the main characters in it are Jo, who's in her late 30s, and she takes over her uncle's. It's kind of a DIY come stationery shop, and she goes there really to help him out, but also to escape the breakdown of a relationship. And she's a bit lost and not sure what to do with her life. And in the course of looking after the shop, she meets Reverend Ruth, who is a runaway vicar. She's escaping what we don't know quite what. And also Malcolm, who is in his 70s. And he's researching a book he never writes, and it's an unexpected friendship about the three of them. But in the course of it explores quite a lot of different themes based around Hampstead and Highgate, but friendship is the core of it. But it also gets into a little bit of history, all sorts of things really, stationery, very much so, but it's things that are very dear to my heart.
As Jo gets to know the shop, she starts adding new and exciting products to the range. I was wondering, are you a stationery obsessive?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the joys of being a writer, is you can say, I'm going to take myself into the place I want to be. When I was a little girl, I used to play post office all the time. And my love of fountain pens definitely comes through the book. And I started a fountain pen company a fair few years ago now. So that really is part of the book. But also in that sense, I am writing what I know about. One of the things that happen within the book and what Jo discovers in this shop is that when people write with fountain pen, they start telling you really intimate things about their lives. So as people are testing the pens in the shop, they are revealing their stories to her as well. And that's, so yes, I think it's true to say I do love stationery.
So you're obviously keen on using fountain pens. Do you write a lot of your work in longhand as a starting point?
No, but I do the planning, and sometimes when I'm scoping out ideas, I might take a big sheet of paper and then I might write with pencil, but also fountain pen. And as I'm typing, I touch type. When thoughts come to me, stray thoughts, I always have a notebook by the side of me, and then I might make those notes in fountain pen. I think it would just take me so long if I actually wrote it all longhand.
Do you find there's a different quality in things you've handwritten compared to
very
typing?
much so. And I think it was Washington University did a study, and you are 3 times more likely to remember something you've handwritten than that you've typed. So I'm definitely ideas for books. I've always got a notebook on the go, always making notes, often in fountain pen. And I think the thing with the fountain pen is it slows you down, that you write more slowly with a fountain pen. It's more considered, which is why I think it's lovely for stationery if you're sending a card to somebody. But also when I'm making notes to do with a book, I might pick up a fountain pen. One, because I love them and it's a pleasure, but also it's slowing me down and sort of making my thoughts more considered.
I've actually been learning Hebrew recently.
Oh, have you?
And I've been, you have to kind of learn the characters by writing. And because you're kind of working from right to left, it kind of makes your brain work you kind of go into this slightly different mode.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
Well, I found that with touch typing, actually, when I learned to touch type because I wanted my daughters to touch type when they were at school, when they were very young. And so we got, in those days, it was like a CD-ROM, and they were practicing. And Libby, my youngest daughter, who is an author, and I always knew she'd be an author, she didn't really take to it. And because I thought of all the people, Alex, my eldest, was very competitive and went at it. Libs didn't. I said, look, I'll do it alongside you. Best thing I ever did, because what I have discovered with touch typing, it releases a whole part of your brain so that you are living it. It's completely different. And I used to type quite fast, but when you touch type, it is, as you say, you discover something different about how your brain works.
Yeah, there's a kind of real mood of nostalgia in the book, which I really liked. And it occurred to me that I think we write about things often that are kind of under threat, or we feel are under threat. And obviously fountain pens are a bit under threat, but I wonder if you feel like friendship is under threat too in this digital age.
No, in fact, one of the reasons I wanted to write the book was because I think from a lot of things we would read in the press and the news, which are really scary and really frightening, make us feel like sometimes the world is imploding. But my experience of friendship and what I know, I ran a market research company for many, many years, and I've spoken to thousands and thousands of people, and all sorts of people that I speak to, whether it was the governor of Holloway Prison or nurses and doctors, all sorts of people. My sense of there is great friendship interwoven underneath the sort of all the awful stuff that is going on. And even amongst the terrible stories that you can read in the press, friendship is underneath there, rescuing, pinning it, helping. So I don't think, I really wanted to explore friendship, but I don't think friendship is something that I would consider is a nostalgic thing. I think it's alive and well and represented within society.
She obviously discovers her kind of self-worth through this friendship. Ruth and Malcolm weren't kind of obvious candidates for her friends. What kind of process did you go through sort of by, in selecting them as the characters?
Well, it really started with Reverend Ruth, because most of the characters I write are really drawn from my imagination or traits that I've picked up along the many years of people I've met. Reverend Ruth is the only person I've ever written who is based very much on somebody I know. And I have a friend, a retired vicar, Reverend Anne, and she is inspiring, whether you have her faith or not. She is quite alternative, warm, humorous, an amazing person. And actually it was during lockdown where she was in our bubble. I spent a lot of time with her and talking to her as I was researching this book about her faith, because I didn't know a lot about the Christian faith, and the way she articulated it was compelling. And so my starting point was Reverend Ruth. Not all the things that happen are an exact replica, but there are certainly some stories in there that are things that she does. And I think my favourite one, am I allowed to mention something that's in the book? Without giving it away. One of the favourite things, just when she gets scam calls, people are saying, I want to speak to you. And she always says, I'd love to speak to you. I'm so glad you've called. And they go, oh, really? Yes, no, now I want to talk to you. I want to bring the love of our Lord Jesus Christ into your lives. And she says, they cannot get off the phone fast enough. And that made me laugh. And I just want to put that in the book. So the other characters really are very much imagination, a bit of this, a bit of that. But certainly Reverend Ruth, who I love dearly as one of the characters, is drawn from some of Reverend Anne's life.
She did really intrigue me. So I'm jumping out of order here, Tabitha, but I wondered whether she was telling the whole truth in the kind of revelation as to why she became a runaway vicar. I could have felt like there might be more that I maybe didn't.
I think she probably told it all, but I think when she originally talks about why she is a runaway vicar, which doesn't reveal the true reason why she's a runaway vicar, that I very much wanted to write about, because when you actually look at what a good vicar, does within society, I was overwhelmed by when I realised what they have to deal with and what they have to do, the scale of their mission, really. And so anybody would balk at that at times. And also the fact when you are a minister, and I suspect it's the same in many religions, people feel that you're not a private person and that they can comment on you. And that, she certainly said, is true. And I know that from other people who are, within faith. They say, people feel it's perfectly all right to comment on your appearance and make personal comments. So I think that was true. And I do think, obviously, because I know them, my characters, it was the reason. So there wasn't anything else hidden.
I wondered if you were saving something for another book.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, sorry to have to go back to order.
Can you tell us a little bit about your research in Hampstead and in Highgate Cemetery, where much of the novel is set? I'd love to know, do you have a personal connection to it? Or is it something explored specifically for the novel?
I think I very much wanted to use the idea of a stationery shop. That could be anywhere. But then just before lockdown, I visited Highgate Cemetery. I had been there before, and it really inspired me. Not really from the sort of Gothic point of view, more the point of these lives of people who are there. And once I started to explore that and the people who are buried or interned there, I came across the most amazing characters, and that whole thing of we have something to share, not only the people who are, the main characters, the main protagonists might share with these people, but this whole idea of if they were to ever meet any of these characters, what they would share. So that really inspired a lot of the book. Then obviously I wanted to make it the place, as somebody who used to be a florist, the wildlife, the greenery, all of that is definitely inspiring to me. But then we had lockdown. So I'd just booked to go on a number of talks and tours around the cemetery. And we were all in lockdown. So I did a lot of it by, online research and listening to everything. And when one of the scenes is set where it's snowing, I hadn't been there during the snow. And in fact, it was Reverend Anne texted me and was going, you've got to watch, it wasn't Spring Watch, but it was one of those programmes, it's set in Highgate Cemetery, because all the presenters couldn't go out to travel far. So somebody who lived near Highgate Cemetery was in there during the snow, talking about the wildlife. I'm like watching it glued, making notes. So it was a kind of a bit of an odd way to have to do research, but I went back recently and I felt comfortable that I'd kind of got it right.
It's quite hard to catch snow in London, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting, because I think quite a lot of lockdown novels will have quite a lot of research that's done via the internet rather than actually going to places.
And do you write with a clear plan in mind before you start, or does your story develop as you go along?
I'm more of a planner. I'm a planner, and then it takes off as I'm writing it, which means obviously you have to change it as it goes along. But my daughter Libby is more of an intuitive who then brings in the plan. I do it the other way around. I'm a planner where then my characters start to talk and they take me off in different directions. And then obviously there's a whole stage of editing where you get advice from other people, which, often when you think about what they're saying, you go, actually, yes, that. They might not come up with a solution, but you might go, okay, I can see why they have an issue with this and I'll find a solution for it. So it's then, it's a whole mix.
Yeah. I was interested in the characters that you selected that Malcolm's researching. Were those kind of the characters from the start, or did you have kind of other?
I had others. I looked around, having visited the Highgate Cemetery, and it was who can I get good biographies of, because whilst I have a background in history, I am not going to start researching all the different characters. So I bought in secondhand bookshops and online, a whole load of biographies, and then started to explore them. I always knew I was going to use Karl Marx and George Eliot because they're the most famous one. But then I literally did what happens in the book. I put all their names on a piece of paper, put them in a bowl, and pick them out at random. So who met who was going to have a conversation with who, was done completely at random. And that then did dictate how the book went. It sort of formed part of, it was, I don't think I'd call that planning, that was more luck, or chance, how the story developed. But I certainly, once I started to, particularly as a Zachary, once I started reading about him, because Abraham Lincoln's chiropodist, who turns out to be his personal spy, that's a story that needs to be told. there's such an extraordinary man.
Yeah.
Do the random draw, your character
yes.
did, because when he chooses who he's going to write about, when they all choose who to should focus on, they just choose some names, don't they?
At random, which is what I did.
Being a story about friendship, it's a story, it's a romance, and I want to ask, do you think it's difficult to write love stories in the era of dating apps? Are we a very cynical age?
I think it's more that it's difficult to write a love story where your characters can develop naturally, because the reality is you'd Google, you WhatsApp, you there's a whole load of ways of connecting that get in the way of the storytelling, really, because you go, well, that wouldn't happen because you do X, Y, and Z. So that was the difficulty. I knew I was going to avoid the sort of dating apps, although I must admit I've got an idea for another book where that would be quite strong. But I didn't want it for this, because really it was a book about friendship, and the love story needed to work alongside that. And it's quite an intimate, it's an intimate space, the shop, Highgate Cemetery. It's kind of, I didn't want to broaden it out into like the whole of the internet and things. So it had to be neighbours who will, shop owners who are neighbours, really.
The kind of feel of the book is kind of optimistic and life-affirming. Do you ever feel drawn to explore sort of darker areas in future works, do you think? Or?
I think so. And certainly The Keeper of Stories has some darker elements. And even within, the Book of Beginnings, there are some more difficult themes. And I think even that whole idea of when a friendship goes wrong and you're out of step with a friend, you can feel physically sick with that, and it can be an obsession. It can be the thing you think about when you wake up in the morning, and can be so distressing. So in that sense, I think I do explore some darker things, but it is not, I'm not dealing with very dark subjects within this book, but I think absolutely within other books I definitely will. Having said that, I can absolutely guarantee that I will always give a happy ending. think that's,
Yeah.
You were touching on the edge of a supernatural storyline at some points with the backstory of the incredible ghosts. Is this something you might explore in later writing?
I would say no, but actually the first book I ever wrote had a sort of supernatural thing, but it's in a different genre, and I don't know quite what we're going to do with that one yet. But it's strange. I've written about, or I touch on ghosts, because this isn't something I read a lot about. It's not something I'm particularly drawn to. So it's almost a bit of a surprise to me that I've done it. So I don't think it will be a theme that's developed in other books.
I did think at one stage you were going to go much further down that path, but you veered away.
And what do you have plans next, if it's not too early to ask? Do you have another novel in the works?
Yes, one of the joys of being what they now call I think it says on the back of this, I am a breakout sensation, is that, I've been writing since 2016, and Oh my goodness, I've had a lot of rejections, and I have written quite a lot of books. So the Book of Beginnings I had written already when I got signed after The Keeper of Stories. That was already written. It did need a lot of editing. And I'm currently talking to Harper Fiction about there are 2 possible routes we could go. Books that are already written, they do need, both of them would need considerable editing. One has a strong floral theme, which I used to run a flower shop, so that's an area that I can write about and know a lot about. And the other area is about creativity and lies. That's quite a fun one. So I think we're discussing at the moment which one to go through, and either route will need a lot of editing.
Do you have a group of writers that you work with and exchange material?
No, I'm very solitary. I really love coming out and talking to readers, booksellers, absolutely love that. But no, when I'm writing, I am very solitary. I'll go and write in a cafe or, move around. And I do chat ideas through with Libby. We would talk about more the difficulties when we're struggling, just not necessarily in detail of what's happening within the plot, just sympathising and empathising when it's a bit hard. But no, when it comes down to it, it's in my head. So it's literally where I'm alone in my head, going off into nice places.
Do you have any advice for writers on how to cope with rejection and how to persevere to get that first publication?
Definitely. Just keep going. I can remember who wrote Olive Kitteridge, is it? Elizabeth Stroud, is it? I heard her interviewed, and she said she got a lot of rejections, and she said every time she got rejected she thought, okay, well, I will write better. And I really tried to take that on board and go, okay, if in the rejection you feel like there is some worth to what somebody's saying, I would go, okay, well, I will do it better, I will write better. So, but I would say to people, just keep going, because the reason, The Keeper of Stories came out was because one woman, Charlotte Ledger, bought it. Nobody bought any of my other, I have a very good agent, but nobody bought any of my other books. Nobody was interested. And she was the only one who was interested in The Keeper of Stories. And it's now sold over 500,000 copies and Sunday Times bestseller. And I always mention her and she goes, thank you, because, she saw it. So to people who are struggling with rejection, it takes one person and then life changes completely for you. So just keep going. That's what I'd say.
Well, I'm glad you did persist.
So did I. So am I. So am I.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Could you read us a excerpt?
Yes, I thought, if I start with just do the prologue, which is short, but it sets the book out, if that's okay.
Yeah, lovely.
So the prologue. Sometimes a heartbeat is all the time it takes to reach a decision. It may not even feel like a considered choice, just the veering away from the prospect of more misery, a final spurt to movement. The room remains unmoved, a silent witness, but loyal in its way to the woman who has just left it. The chair pushed out from the table tells no tales. The plate of half-eaten roll and cheddar, extra mature, with leftover Christmas pickle, 8 months old but still going strong, lies in mute defiance. The man calls her name and, without pausing to be invited in, pushes open the door that leads from the hall into the kitchen. And why would he pause? He has already let himself in the front door without asking. He huffs and puffs his way around the kitchen, opening the fridge, flicking through the diary left open on the table. The diary doesn't give her away either. Its record of parish meetings, choir practice, and a planned visit to a local garden centre with her curate, a testament to a seemingly blameless life. Maybe there is something in the handwriting. A neatly formed hand, precise and clear, apart from a kink in the S's that look as if they would like to escape from the regularity of the line. Opposite him, the back door to the garden, which always requires a doorstop, for once stands half open, half closed, stilled as if in anticipation like the rest of the room. Then very slowly it swings on its hinges and quietly clicks shut. 90 miles away, off an alleyway in North London, another door is pushed open. The mail piled up in the entrance slithers aside and the broken bell clinks its tinny welcome. First across the threshold is a solitary leaf, a twist of orange sent spiralling by a late August wind that holds within its warmth the piquant tang of autumn. A woman watches the leaf spinning progress into the quiet darkness of the shop within. For her, autumn has always been a season of beginnings, punctuated in her childhood by the anticipatory thrill of new shoes, crayons and pencil cases. Now she only thinks of endings.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.